My name is Colin Beavan. I'm also known as No Impact Man. And about 2 weeks ago, the Guggenheim Museum, for some project that they're working on, wrote to me and they said, could you give us your thoughts on progress? So I wrote a couple of sentences and I thought, and I knew I was coming here, and I thought it would be fun to talk about progress here because we're talking about trends. And I think it's important to ask ourselves, are the trends that we're seeing, could they be counted as progress or could they not be counted as progress? And I'm really interested in, progress is a word that we never unpack. We kind of take it for granted for what it means, and I'm very interested in taking the idea of progress back to first principles. Like, what actually is progress? And I think that the first question, if you want to make progress, the first question to be asked is, how should we be spending our lives? Because we're now on a planet with limited resources, and so the question becomes, how are we going to use those resources? What are we doing here? I mean, what are we doing here in this auditorium, but what are we doing here? How do we want to spend our lives? So 2009 had cooler cell phones than 2008. 2010 has cooler cell phones than 2009. No doubt, 2011 will have cooler cell phones than 2010. Year in, year out, we get cooler telephones. The question is, if we're doing the same thing over and over and over again, is it really progress? Or is it just more of the same? So back in 2006, I got really depressed and worried about global warming, and I dragged my poor little family on a project that was called No Impact Man. It gained a fair amount of notoriety. What happened was basically we took a year from the end of 2006 to the end of 2007 where we would live as sustainably as possible. And I'm not talking about not using plastic bags and screwing in CFL bulbs. I'm talking about never using any transportation that caused any kind of climate emissions, which means not even the subway. So we biked everywhere. Or because we couldn't buy truly green electricity, eventually we actually just turned the electricity off. And my poor wife was kind of the guinea pig as we went along. And I want to just tell you two quick stories. So about a month into the project, I had decided, my little girl was 18 months old, and I had decided that she obviously could not use throwaway diapers. And so one day this box came. And it was for her, and she was really excited. So out of the box came these brown pieces of organic cotton cloth. And she's like, what is it, Dad? Because she could talk a little, you know, even though she was still in a diaper. What is it, Daddy? I said, those are your new diapers. And she kind of takes them out, and she's like waving them around like a flag. Like it's the No Impact Man flag is an organic cloth diaper, right? So she's waving, and she said, Bella's new diapers, Bella's new diapers. And she goes running up to her mom, who's sitting on the couch. And she says, look, Mommy, Bella's new diapers. And her mom, who's sitting there reading a magazine, looks down, and she says to her, yes, honey, those are something that you're going to be playing with your daddy. And fair enough, because it was my project. And so, you know, I went from, in that moment, from 50% diaper changer to 100% diaper changer. And so, you know, at first lots of puddles on the floor because using cloth diapers is a little bit like learning how to do origami. But after about 2 weeks, it was time to change Bella's diaper. And there was, I couldn't put my hand on a cloth diaper. And so I was reaching around the closet, there was one plastic diaper left. And so I went to go put it on Bella, and she started screaming, no, Bella want new diapers, Bella want, like, you know, like I had to do like a sumo wrestling move to put this thing on her. And finally I didn't because she was so upset. And if you think about it, that's a little thought experiment, like why did she want the cloth diaper versus the plastic diaper? You can do a little thought experiment here. Like, so imagine that in the morning, usually you put on cotton, probably cotton underwear, it feels fine. So imagine if instead you were to take saran wrap and wrap it around your butt and wear it for the day. you would understand why Bella wanted the new diapers. And my wife witnessed this. And in that moment, she thought and she said, you know, I don't know whether having plastic diapers against my baby's skin 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for 2 years is poison for my baby, but I do know that organic cotton is not. And I know that my little girl feels better in the cloth diapers. And in that moment, my wife, I went happily back from 100% diaper changer to 50% diaper changer. So another story, because we had no electricity, we had no air conditioning. Because we have no air conditioning, and no TV, there was really no reason to be in the apartment on a hot summer's night. And we live kind of both near Hudson River Park and Washington Square Park, so we would spend our time, lots of time, sitting in the fountain on the hot nights. Isabella would run around the fountain. The students would come, maybe playing chamber music. We would talk to our neighbors. It became a social activity that was, quite frankly, better than being huddled over takeout in front of the TV. And an old lady said to me, she said, you know, she had grown up just after World War II, she said, some of the happiest days of my life were the nights when it was too hot to stay indoors, because we would have like a block party at midnight, because everybody would come out and sit on their stoop because it was too hot to be indoors by ourselves. And so it became a social event, a hot night, juxtaposed to us being alone, huddled in front of our air conditioners by ourselves. And my point is not that we're supposed to all turn off our AC or turn off our electricity. My point here is that we learned through our one-year experiment, we kind of withdrew from so-called progress, and we learned that some of it wasn't really progress at all. That actually the really interesting question may be not how do we use fewer resources to continue doing what we're doing, but how do we make sure that those precious resources that we do use are actually making us happy. Typically, the question that a sustainability officer will ask is, okay, whatever it is that I'm doing, the question is, can I do it forever and ever? You know, do I recycle my materials? Do I get my energy renewably? Do I have a sustainable transport? Sustainability, as we define it in our culture, just means, can we do it over and over and over and over again without wrecking the world? And so, you know, like the holy grail just at the moment of the sustainability movement is the electric car. Because if we could get the electric car, and then soon enough we'll have windmills and solar panels, and we can plug the electric car in, and everything will be great. But the only problem is we'll still be stuck with this. Recently, and don't get me wrong, by the way, just what does this mean? The average LA citizen is spending 2 weeks a year in a traffic jam, more than some people get for vacation. Or the average American citizen is spending 15% of their income to pay for their car, which sounds like just a number, except when you translate that into 7 weeks of work a year, right? If you add also to that the 72 minutes most of us spend alone in our cars, the time that we spend alone in our cars and the time that we spend paying for our cars equals 4 work months a year. So even if we have an electric car, is it the best for us? So, you know, of course I'm all into like the idea of our corporations doing things that are better. But for example, recently, who owns Sun Chips? Is it PepsiCo? Yeah, PepsiCo has come out with this revolutionary idea that they are going to make the Sun Chip bag compostable, right? The bag is not going to stay here for thousands of years made out of plastic. So that's great. So the good news is, this kid's potato chip bag is not going to be in the ground for millions of years. So those of you who are parents, don't you feel better now? You know, it's just the real opportunity in this crisis that we're having is to ask ourselves, to ask ourselves, what is progress? At this stage in the game, you know, is it sitting in traffic jams but being pleased that the car's electric? Or is it getting fat from food that, well, it's not really even food, but the package is compostable? Because if the resources are limited, the question is, shouldn't we really be always, shouldn't the compass point be that we're using those resources for our betterment? Because the real question is not, can we do it? The real question is, should we do it? So I'm just going to take a step back now and tell you that I have a little nonprofit. It's called the No Impact Project. And what's interesting, this is our webpage, and what I personally think is interesting is you see where it says, what do you want? It doesn't say, how do you want to save the world, or how are you willing to deprive yourself? It says, basically, the question is, how do you want to live your life? Because what if we can find a way to save our planet and save ourselves at the same time? And believe it or not, so we have this program where people kind of have this one-week retreat from consumerdom. It's called the No Impact Week. Over nearly 10,000 people have done it now. And believe it or not, when you say, what do you want from your life? Like, if you can find a way of life that's better for you and better for the planet, what they do not say, I want masticated corn in fried in oil and then put in a compostable bag. What they say is, I want food that's good for me. I want a life that's good for me. And they say, I want to find a way of life that's both better for me and for the planet, so that we have food. You know, so many people don't even have access to an apple. They do have access to sun chips, but not to the apple, so that we have food that's good for us and good for the planet. So what I'm saying here is that the measure should be, is it good for us also? Or that where we use our land so that it's designed not for cars, but for people, so that we can actually have communities and be together. And some of you, I don't know, some of you are in business and you may be asking, you know, what's it got to do with business? This is all pie in the sky. But my belief is, you know, you cannot, if you're a surfer, you cannot ride the back of the wave. And so many companies are doing this sustainability catch-up thing, right? Where they're trying to make the things that they do sustainable. And as you know from the soda companies, the beverage companies, consumers are moving on. Consumers know if consumers are starting to catch on, and they're not interested in things. They're not as, you have to convince them to be interested in things that aren't good for them. And they know. So I believe that the front of the wave now, the front of the sustainability wave, is this question of what's good for the people. You know, the roots of capitalism come from this idea that it's rewarded altruism. Where the roots of capitalism come from the idea that it's like the Three Little Pigs, you know, you live in a straw house, but you know what? I can build you a brick house and you'll be protected from the big bad wolf, and you pay me, and I profit from being good to you. So the roots of capitalism come from filling needs for other people, helping other people for profit. But we're now at the stage where we don't deal with real needs, we manufacture the needs. We say, I have something I'd like to sell to you. Let me see if I can figure out a way to make you think that you need it. So what about if instead we figured out what people really need? So, you know, I talked about the cell phones before, and personally, just from my own point of view, I feel that now that we can watch TV on our walkie-talkies, because that's what the cell phone is, right? It's a walkie-talkie. Now that we can watch TV on our walkie-talkies, we might be able to say as a culture, we're going to let the walkie-talkie rest for a little while. And what if, this is aspirational now, this is environmentalism as, not as deprivation, but as ambition and aspiration. And what if we said to ourselves, what real need can we fill? What can we go out there and do to help people? And I would posit that one thing we could think about is that that 1 billion people in the world don't have access to clean drinking water. And as a result, 1.4 million children under the age of 5 die of diarrhea every year. So I'm saying, imagine this. Imagine a different definition of progress. Imagine that 2011 has fewer diarrhea deaths than 2010. That 2012 has fewer diarrhea deaths than 2011. That 2013 has fewer diarrhea deaths than 2012. That year in, year out, fewer kids die of diarrhea. And then one day, no children die of diarrhea. That, I think, is progress. So thank you.